Hello there. This is the second part to the fan fiction Motley Crew. If you haven't seen the first part, I recommend you go watch it. Now sit back and relax. But just a warning, some of these novels get down and dirty, and some are straight up violent. Motley Crew, Part 2. Jiang invisibly shivered. Everyone knew just how cruel Bang Chan's little rewards can be. Therefore, no one in his right mind wouldn't do anything to escape them. But Jisun was completely relaxed, daydreaming about who knows what. Jiang was fully convinced that he was the greatest masochist of all. Bang, the greatest sadist, Chan, meanwhile, opened a large book in his lap. After coughing twice, he began to read out loud. The text must have been written thousands of years ago, since it contained ancient words Jiang didn't even know existed. Neither did the leader, apparently, the confused look on his face speaking for itself. Jiang finally realized why was Jisun so calm. They could say basically anything. Bang Chan would believe it was in the book. Jiang leaned back relievedly and let his mind wander around. During the break today, he saw a photo of Hyunjin. It wasn't just an ordinary photo, though. The man looked like a Greek god in it, his sweaty hair falling into his gorgeous eyes, tongue darting across his dry lips, head slightly tilted to the side, leaving his sleek neck visible for the prying eyes. Just how good it would feel to run his fingers down his nape, and his thoughts were abruptly cut off by a nudge on his sleeve. He furiously looked at the perpetrator. He didn't want to return to reality yet, and the one who forced him to do so will have a taste of his wrath. Jisun, noticing his bad mood and the ferocious glint in his eyes, was suddenly reminded of a ravening fox. Just to make sure he wouldn't get bitten in the next second, he retreated to a safe distance. To cool off the wild beast's anger that came out of nowhere, he hurriedly pointed at the sleeping Bang Chan, wordlessly explaining why he dared to disturb him. At this, Jiang's irritation clearly eased. He was so lost in his thoughts he didn't even notice when the monotonous reading stopped. Jisun, after escaping death, heaved a sigh of relief and waved to the Motley to follow him outside. Jiang obediently did so, shooting one more look at the snoozing Bang Chan. Saliva was drooling from his open mouth, while he snored so loudly his whole body was shaking. If fans saw this scene, they would burst out crying. The leader they all adored was extremely ugly like this. Jiang hurriedly went after Jisun, and they sat down in the middle of the corridor. The rapper massaged his temples while complaining about how these classes were the most pointless things in the world. You know, I've been his student for half a year now, and I'm not sure if I can take this anymore. His tone was pained and resentful. How did you even become a student? You stole his favorite shirt or what? He was pretty sure he saw Jisun in the black top a few weeks ago. Jisun's smile froze and he started into Jiang's eyes with a warning look. He doesn't know that yet, and it would be the best if you kept quiet about it. Both for you and me, he said intently, but then grinned like he wasn't threatening the vocalist just a few seconds ago and picked up where he left off. I'm about to tell you something shocking, so be prepared. He caught me and Minho kissing backstage. Oh, really? Jiang asked casually. Why aren't you surprised? Nobody knows what to get. Jisun was visibly confused. He just told him this decade's greatest tea. The bare minimum he expected was the Motley's jaw dropping. I'm sorry to break it to you, but everyone knows his pitying gaze really hurt Jisun's pride. He thought they hit it thoroughly, but if even the oblivious Jiang knew it, he felt his whole worldview crumble down at once. Anyways, how did it happen? How did he catch you? Watching his high and sour expression, Jiang quickly changed the subject. We were backstage before a performance, and I was a bit nervous. So Minho came to me and, how should I say it, tried to encourage me. That's why, when Chan was searching for Felix, who seemingly disappeared, in truth he just went to the toilet instead of finding him, he discovered us making out in a dark corner. He was so pissed his whole face was red as he lectured us about being so careless. I swear he could already see next day's articles about us kissing, supported by pictures, eyewitnesses and everything. He didn't know we had great experience in finding the most isolated places, where no one could find us. Jisun had an evil grin plastered on his face. He was making a big fuss, and Minho had enough of it, so he decided I should shoulder the responsibility. He cut off Chan's whining and confessed that I forced him to do it. Also, he knew fully well how dangerous it was, but I just wouldn't listen to him. He even managed to force out some fake tears. Then all of our leader's fury was directed at me, and he said he'll hold disciplinary classes for me to improve my horrible behavior, then promised to give Minho some kind of dessert after the performance. He was so angry at me, I thought I wouldn't see the light of tomorrow. The fact that I was dying of laughter the whole time probably didn't help either, but I just couldn't help it. After all, I was the one pinned against the wall. But Chan was too furious to notice this small detail. Jiangyan was guffawing throughout the story. He could clearly imagine the scene. Yesterday's incident didn't seem that horrendous anymore. It was reassuring to know that at least someone had it worse than you. Actually, these classes aren't as terrible as I said so earlier. Usually it takes him no more than 10 minutes to fall asleep. Though today he was quite persistent and managed to hold out for a quarter of an hour. Truly admirable, said Jisung sarcastically. We'll just wake him up a bit later. Until then you should tell me everything. Jiangyan got a bad feeling from the way his eyebrows moved up and down in an alarmingly fast speed. What do you mean? After a slight hesitation he asked, disregarding his apprehension. Come on, don't play dumb, my dear Jiangyan. I'm obviously asking about you and Hyunjin. After disclosing the secret from before, I'm pretty sure I have the right to know. Really? Jiangyan should have known better. Jisung would never spill the tea for free. After all, he was Minho's boyfriend, so he evidently picked up some of those savage habits. He let out the deep sigh. Why was he naive enough to trust this gossipy old lady? I told you before, there's nothing between us. We have a completely platonic friendship. To be honest, I would be the happiest person alive if it wasn't like this. His pained expression made the rapper's heart soften, and he immediately believed him. That's the charm of the youngest. That sucks, he says sympathetically. Jiangyan merely nodded, suddenly depressed, realizing how hopeless his situation was. Awkward silence enveloped them. We should probably return. It's getting late, said Jisung, after he couldn't stand the despondent atmosphere any longer. Even Chan's boring lesson was better than gloomily sitting here. After waking up their leader, they convinced him that he was only asleep for 1 or 2 seconds, and they awakened him straight away. Strange, it'd gotten so late in just a few minutes, he said suspiciously, glancing out the window. Jisung nervously laughed, then explained in great details how the sky darkened faster during this time of October. It was all nonsense, but Jisung had such a great persuasive ability that even Jiangyan was close to believing him. Bang Chan's doubts were all dispelled, and he ended the class in a good mood, completely forgetting to ask anything about what they learned today. Jiangyan tumbled into his bed after such an exhausting day and fell asleep the moment his head touched the pillow. He really deserved some rest, didn't he? At the middle of the night he was awakened to light sounds that seemed to be getting closer and closer to him. In an instant he could already see the ruthless murderer next to his bed. For some reason he had a sudden feeling of déjà vu, but right now he couldn't care any less about that. At first he froze from the shock, lying motionlessly, but when the terrifying shadow took another step forward he opened his mouth to scream. To his greatest horror, a large palm covered his mouth. He desperately wanted to shove away the murderer, but a gentle voice suddenly whispered in his ear, "Climb down, it's just me, Hyunjin." Jiangyan instantly turned as red as a tomato. How embarrassing. Just 2 days ago basically the same thing happened. Maybe, but just maybe, he was a bit paranoid. Hyunjin let out a soft chuckle and lightly stroked aside his face. He gently gripped Jiangyan's hand. Thus he could help him out of the bed and lead him to the living room quietly. There wasn't anyone there, and at the light of a nearby small lamp the Magni was finally able to see Hyunjin. You made it. It wasn't a question, just an exclamation. The huge smile on the dancer's face made it clear how he did during today's video shooting. Yeah, I did. All thanks to you, he whispered while staring intently into Jiangyan's eyes. The atmosphere suddenly changed. There was an unspoken meaning behind those words. The whole scene seemed romantic for some reason. Their shadows dancing on the white walls, the moonlight seeping through the window, the scent of Hyunjin's cologne, the small distance between them and Jiangyan's increasingly faster heartbeat. How did I even help? He asked, trying his best to not let his voice crack. How should I explain it? Hyunjin awkwardly scratched the back of his neck, unintentionally showing off his biceps. making it hard for Jungin to decide whether to gawk at his muscles or his handsome face. You being next to me fills me with confidence. It feels like I can do anything. And not only that, your presence always brightens my mood. Knowing you're near me never fails to make my day a better one. Jungin couldn't breathe. Hyunjin's words were like honey, making him feel like he was drowning in sweetness. His Hein only said those things in his wildest dreams, but it felt too real for it to only be a trick by his imagination. The cold floor under his feet, the light emitting from below a bandmate's door, and the warmth of Hyunjin's hands that at some point intertwined with his own ones. His cheeks were flushed, making the other person lightly chuckle. You're the most important person to me. Always have been and always will be. I adored you from the time I first saw you. You were just so irresistible and I couldn't move my gaze away from you, not like I wanted to. In fact, it's something that hasn't changed to this day. I more often than not catch myself staring at you. It's kind of embarrassing. I know, but I just can't help it. It would be wasteful to not admire your beauty. However, you're much more than your looks. You're kind, hardworking, considerate, and empathetic. Literally an angel sent from above to make the world a better place. No one ever talked about Jungin like this, with such a care and adoration. His grip on the other's hands tightened, desperately trying to convey how much these words meant to him. I love you. Truthfully, I always have. I fell for your everything. All of your little things that make you who you are. Not only your talents and passions, but your shortcomings and fears as well. You're like my other half. Only what you do I feel as a whole. It probably sounds stupid, but it's like we were made for each other, you know, and I'm aware that you most likely don't feel the same way, but it's okay. You don't have to force yourself, and if you can't stand me after all of this, just say so. I understand it. I'll leave you alone and won't bother you with anything like this ever again. But if there's a slight you reciprocate my feelings, then give me a chance, please. I treat you the way you should be treated and you don't need to worry about anything. I'll make sure no inconvenience troubles you. And Jungin was on cloud nine. Hyunjin loved him. Hyunjin, who he was pining for since ages. He couldn't even start to comprehend the meaning behind this single phrase. This I love you. It was all too much for him. He was never good with words, and he couldn't say romantic things like Hyunjin did. Maybe the man was right, and they were indeed made for each other, making up for the other's imperfections. So he didn't even try to go into great details about how he felt or why did he feel this way. It just wasn't needed. I love you too, that's all he said, abruptly cutting off Hyunjin's rambling. It was only a sole sentence, merely consisting of 4 words, but it meant everything for both of them. Hyunjin heaved a sigh of relief and a big smile formed on his rosy lips. A fond glint was dancing in his ravishing eyes. Stray strands of hair were enhancing his charm even more. Bathed in the weak moonlight, he looked like the divine god of beauty. Jungin just wanted to get closer to him and have the deity all for himself. Luckily, his prayers were answered, and the god didn't make him wait for long. Can I kiss you? Jungin only nodded, letting Hyunjin cup his face in both hands, bringing their lips together. The kiss was pure and sweet, no forcefulness at all. It was perfect, making happiness bloom in his chest. His heart was pounding so hard, he worried it would break through his rib cage. He brought his hands to Hyunjin's nape, running his fingers through the man's messy black hair, as he wanted to do so for many years. Their noses gently brushed together, making both of them smile unintentionally like the idiots they were. Maybe they could have gotten together years ago, but young love didn't last long in most cases. Also, the long wait only strengthened their feelings, and right now, after they could finally have each other, the contentment was immense. Hyunjin looked at him with so much love, Jungin thought he would suffocate from tenderness. The dancer brushed a strand of hair out of his face, then sweetly smiled at the other's cute reaction, a deep red blush. Jungin, to hide his scarlet cheeks, brought their lips together once again. Hyunjin didn't try to protest. He was pretty content with this outcome. Young Jungin, haven't I told you not to do anything like this in public spaces? We had a class just hours ago and you already disregard all of my teachings. You're forcing our poor Hyunjin once again, aren't you? You are even worse than I originally thought, shouted Bang Chen, furiously pointing at Jungin, who was literally in the dancer's arms, while he compelled someone older and stronger to who knows what Ban Chan probably saw them half naked. Jianghan was truly a horrible person. Awakened to the leader shouting, the others also crawled out of their rooms one by one, and witnessing the scene all of them started yelling various things. Jianghan, you liar. I believe there was nothing going on between you. You shamelessly lied to me, who trusted you with my biggest secret. I never again believe a word you say, no matter what. Jisun was the loudest, wildly roaring, completely forgetting he was wearing Chan's missing shirt. Hyunjin let go of him and squeezed his hand softly, wordlessly comforting him, although he had no idea what was happening around him. Jianghan, completely disregarding the other bandmates' existence, only gazed at him. The dancer with the puzzled look on his pretty face resembled a lost fairy. Jianghan burst out laughing right there and then. He couldn't take it seriously anymore. His life during the past few days was just too chaotic. Still, he got Hyunjin by his side, and like this, clearing up things even with their crazy family wouldn't be that hard. So he just smiled brightly and signaled for everyone to come closer. He gently pulled on Hyunjin's hand and sat down next to him. Why don't we have a long talk, where I can explain everything? Now that the story is over, why don't you subscribe? Snoopdy Dawg out.